Before the Gutenberg printing press, books had to be copied by hand. Quite often this was done with German monks who had nothing better to do with their time. And since books were so difficult to acquire, this made them rare. And rarity makes things expensive. From this we can infer that only affluent people could afford books in the first place. And from that, we can assume that only rich people even knew how to read. But, with the introduction of the Gutenberg printing press, suddenly books were much more affordable and accessible to the masses, and literacy and reading spread throughout the world like wildfire. I believe it is the most important invention of the modern period. Gutenberg's invention of the mechanical movable type printing started the printing revolution. For the first time, the written word was able to be brought to the common person. People could learn to read for themselves, think for themselves, and educate themselves. The invention's mass communication permanently changed the entire structure of society. People could also read the Bible for themselves for the first time ever. Its invention signaled the end of the Dark Ages and the birth of the Renaissance period. Here is a great quote by Mark Twain regarding the invention. "What the world is today, good and bad, it owes to the Gutenberg. Everything can be traced to this source, but we are bound to bring him homage. For the bad that his colossal invention has brought about is overshadowed 1,000 times by the good with which mankind has been favored." Johann Gutenberg was born in Mainz, Germany, sometime near 1395. He experimented with printing in his late 40s. He himself was not a particularly interesting man. In fact, the legacy of Gutenberg does not exist with the man, but instead with the effect that the Gutenberg printing press, the Gutenberg Bible, and the movable type had across Europe and the rest of the world. But enough talk about Gutenberg himself. The real importance of the printing press came from the effect of the invention. In the Renaissance, suddenly everyone had at their disposal scientific text, literature, and historical resources. With this came a feeling of discovery and investigation that swept the world. But even more than just literature is a matter of mass communication. Suddenly, like never before with the invention of the printing press, scientific and geographic discoveries could be transmitted much more quickly. Government reports and medical documents could reach the world at a much greater pace. We were now entering into an era of mass communication like never before. The printing press played a crucial role in the spread of information and the development of mass communication, as written works could be spread at an alarming rate. Ideas and information gained an increasingly larger audience as literacy and education spread paved the way for these. The common man had finally been bestowed with one of the most useful tools he can equip, knowledge. Once groups such as the scientific community had gained access to this monumental advantage, their knowledge and experience was spread throughout and amongst themselves, helping to quickly build up our technological prowess and further advance our communication abilities. As the limits of information sharing and communication were pushed and stretched farther, our world became, as Marshall McLuhan describes it, a global village. Never before had information traveled so freely as it did during this time of technological innovation, and it would only improve in its transference. If it hadn't been for that first step taken by Johann Gutenberg, many more developments that brought us to our modern day would have taken longer to manifest a new reality, or possibly never have become one at all. The methods for relating ideas and opinions have come a long way, and there can be absolutely no doubt that the printing press is what sparked and fed the fire of progression in mass communication techniques. Johann Gutenberg is credited with the first invention of a functioning movable printing press in Europe. With the printing press, he also introduced movable type, allowing for mass production of books. One of the key components of Gutenberg's invention was the introduction of the movable type. It employs the use of movable components to manufacture literary works one individual element at a time. It should be acknowledged that technically Gutenberg did not invent the movable type. Movable type had existed in China for hundreds of years prior to his invention, but Gutenberg did integrate metal alloys into his, which made it much more efficient, and he brought it to Europe, which at the time was a much more important global market. Perhaps the most important book to come out of the Gutenberg Revolution was the Gutenberg Bible. Also called the 42-Line Bible, this book was the first book ever produced with mass production movable type. It appealed to everyone as it was written in Latin and was about their favorite religion. Today it is regarded as one of the most important and rarest books ever made. The Bible opened the door for many more books to come and is one of the most influential books ever made. Gutenberg's printing press is perhaps the most important invention of humankind. Without it, no one would be literate, educated, or intelligent. The printing press opened the door for an entire world of uneducated people to see the light of literature. Before the advent of Gutenberg's invention, people couldn't read the Bible for themselves, let alone any other form of writing. But with the invention of the printing press and the introduction of movable type to the Western world, suddenly an expansive menagerie of fiction and reference material was available to the common man. The general populace could now afford books of their own, which inspired reading, thinking for yourself, and the exploration of individual and radical ideas. The Gutenberg printing press truly changed the world. With the introduction of the printing press and the movable type, suddenly books were made available to everyone. And if books are made available to everyone, then everyone has the chance to become literate, and the world would never be the same again.